Well, when I was 6 years old, my parents went to send me to school, and what they did is they thought I was too young. I should wait another year until I am 7 to go. But then I wanted to go to school. So what happened is my sister was going to all girls school, and she said, "Why don't you come with me and see how you like, you know, going to school." So she took me to all girls school, and guess what? The minute I entered there, I was wearing a very nice suit, but with shorts. All the girls clustered around me and created a nervousness in me, and they were admiring me, but I didn't like that. Too much attention. And then they made me sit in the classroom, and the teacher, the minute she saw me, said, "What are you doing here? Who brought you?" And my sister said, "Oh, I'm just, he's with me," and so on. This is when we were very young. So anyway, I really did not want to go to school because it was at that time. So I waited for a year, and then when I was 7, I went to a nearby school, and in that school, I stayed 6 years until I finished. And in that school also, there was a project of writing. And the teacher looked at me and said, "You come and join us." And I had another friend who later on became a writer and a poet. He also was with us. And then we made a newspaper, wall newspaper. And then I think when it was finished, I had very few simple ideas, but I think the teacher wrote most of it. And it was a very strange subject, the difference between men and women, which is very strange. So years later, I think in 1977, when I went back to visit Iraq, I left Iraq in 1969. In 1977, when I went back to Iraq to visit, I went to that school. And guess what? The newsletter still was on the wall, hanging on the wall. And I looked at it, I read the essays, which my name was there. I think I had nothing to do with it, maybe a few words or so. I started laughing, and then I went to see the principal. And the minute he knew me, he was so excited because he says, "All these years I have been working here, I see your name on that newsletter." And the rest of them never left the country, but he knows their families and so on. But me, no. This was the first time he meets with me. So anyway, and then when I finished, but it did leave some kind of impression on me that if you write, or even if your name is on any writing, you can, people will pay attention to you. That was my experience in regard to writing. And then when I went to intermediate school, and apparently in Iraq we have intermediate school that is like 5 years. 3 years you study there, and then you go to high school, which is 2 years only. You specialize. So when I was in intermediate years, I realized that I had interest in history, but I really did not know how to express it. And every time I wrote something, the teacher would ask me to, come and read it in front of the class. And they would ask me questions, and I would answer it. And one of my teachers, I think he's Kurdish, I even remember his name. He looked at me, he said, "Fawzi, I think you are going to be a historian." How do I know? But I think that when I think about it, the people who really influenced me to have interest in history and literature was number one was my mother. I mean, she would sit at night before we went to bed, and even at that time we didn't have electricity. When I was little, we had a stove and we would sit around it, and she will tell us stories about Thousand and One Nights. And you know, one story that really you know, created all kind of imagination in my mind and head was this guy who was a merchant, and he went everywhere in the world. How do I know this kind of stories would influence me in the future and become a traveler? So anyway, when I was in high school, I participated in another newsletter to be hanged on the wall. And I remember my subject was called the Geography of Heart, which is a very creative title. I don't remember what I wrote actually, but I do remember the title. And then from there I went to high school. In high school I spent 2 years, and then I went to college. I went to college in Baghdad, where I studied, tried to major in 2 subjects. One, Sharia law, which is Islamic law. Another was Arabic literature. If you know, and at that time, you know, the way or social mobility, or to be advanced in the society, you had to become a lawyer, a doctor, or go to Sharia college and become a judge, you know, in family cases, in a family court, things like that. So I really did not like the law when I was in college. I did not like the law, so what did I do? I spent almost big portion of my school days going to the library and reading. It was at that library, at the Central Library in Baghdad, where I really discovered, you know, mystics in Islamic and Arabic history, and I also discovered Jean-Paul Sartre, the philosopher, European philosopher, Heidegger, writers like Albert Camus, and it was, I was fascinated. And you know what? When I was in college, my teacher, one of my teachers, asked me, you know, asked all students to write essays, and he would grade them. And I remember I wrote one major essay, and the title was "What is Beautiful?" I had to define beauty. And you know what? At that time, I found a book by George Santayana, who happened to be in the 50s or sometime around that time, a professor at Harvard, who wrote a book about what is beauty. So I read his book very, very carefully and many times in translation. I read his book and I summarized all the stuff, and I added some of my points. And the teacher, when he saw it, he said, "This is really very good." And I had very much interest in college in philosophy, in logic and philosophy. And I had big problem with the religious studies. Big problem. Why? Because I had very independent mind, argumentative. Nothing really satisfied me, and you know, I was so tired of this attempt to block your mind and block logic and believe in things through faith. I did not want that. I knew that. So anyway, I was one of the better students. Yeah, when I was in college, I really did not like, you know, too much arguments on the faith side. I was very much sympathetic to logical discourse, which was lacking in college. But nevertheless, I did well in school. And then 2 professors recommended that I will be sent to Cairo to finish my, you know, to do PhD there in philosophy at Al-Azhar University, which is one of the oldest, probably the college I was in Baghdad was also one of the oldest colleges in the Middle East. Anyway, And at Al Azhar, in the classroom, I was so disappointed to see the same old thing as it was repeated in Baghdad. I mean, these people sit there, big professors, big mind, and all, to discuss deity, God. Where is God? Is he on the top of the world? Is he on the bottom of the world? Is he on the right or on the left? I did not really like that kind of discussion. So one day I got so fed up reading it, but I had to pass the exam. I got so disgusted, so I went down and I saw a peasant woman selling yogurt in the street. So I looked at her, I said, tell me, where is God? She looked at me, said, she looked at me, said, what kind of question is that? You stupid. Don't you know God is in the heart of believers? I was really stunned at her answer, and I was start thinking about all these great philosophers in Islamic history, and they exhausted themselves to tell us where God is. Is it on the top of the world, or the right, or this? He is in the heart of those who believe in him. It's end of story. You know what I did? I left college at that time. I didn't want to do anything with it, and I went to teaching. And when I was a teacher, I began to be active in writing, and I wrote articles and sent them to Cairo. I sent them to Beirut, where the top two centers of for publications and journal in the Arab world. So this was my and then in 1969, when I after 2 years of teaching, I was teaching Kurdish people, and they are non-Arabs, of course. They are non-Semitic. I am a Turk. We are different race than Arabs. Arabs are Semitic like Jewish people, and the Kurds are mostly Indo-European. Their language is Indo-European. They are non-Semitic, but I was Turkmen teaching Kurds Arabic, which is very interesting. At that time there was war, civil war in Iraq, and the Iraqi army brutally was fighting the Kurdish rebels and trying to put down the uprising. So anyway, I really escaped the area, and then I went back to the city, to the educational office, and I told the director, I said, you either move me to another school in Kirkuk or wherever, or the big city, or I'm not going to go back, I will resign. He didn't pay attention to me. But I had friends in Baghdad, and they made arrangement for me to go to Algeria and to teach Arabic there. So I went to Algeria. They appointed me to be a teacher in a Berber school. Just to think about it, a Turkmen teaches Arabic to Kurds who are not Arabs, and then go to North Africa, teach Berbers who are not Arabs. It was, what a fate. But in Algeria, I did teach. I did encourage my students to, write and read things the same way I saw, success for myself in my life. And then on top of that, I was very, very active participant in writing in a local newspaper. At that time there was one big newspaper, very large newspaper in circulation, and Algerians at that time did not know Arabic very well, but I know Arabic very well, and most people who know Arabic very well are apparently non-Arabs, because they learn the grammar, they learn all the ins and outs of the language, and pay serious attention to learning. Arabs take it for granted, it's their own language and they don't care. So anyway, I became like an editor without having a job in the newspaper. I would correct, you know, the writings of others, and I wrote a lot of essays and articles and short pieces in that newspaper for almost 3 years, from 69 to 72. 69, 70, 71, 72 I left. So, and I remember one thing, I even wrote poetry there. One day I was on a vacation, I went to Spain, and in the evening, you know, it was New Year's Eve, I went to a bar, I had a beer, and then I wanted to write. So I asked the bartender if he could give me a pen. I took the napkin that he gave me, and I started writing a piece of poem on it. It's called Night in Madrid, One Night in Madrid. So in the morning I put it in an envelope and a stamp and send it. You know what, before I came, I arrived in my city, I saw newspapers accumulated in front of my villa I lived in, and then I opened one of them. Here my poem was published in that. I was so surprised, from napkin to the print. I mean, people, you know, I don't know, somehow I had the luck, and being published after the bad experience I had in Baghdad with that editor. But after that, and after I published a good essay in Cairo in a very important magazine, everything was so easy. I would write trash, they would publish. I would write serious stuff, but I never accepted to write any trash, to be very honest. I always tried hard to have a good product, because you know what, that's you. If you produce trash, that's you. If you produce good work, that's you. So I was aware of that fact for a very, very long time. And you know, when I came in '72 to United States, I continued my education. I did both masters and PhD at Boston University, and you know, I benefited a great deal from being at Harvard Library, working there as a specialist, Arabic specialist. I used the Harvard resources, which is unmatched anywhere in the world. And you know, I also produced a few books there, and mostly bibliographies, and I also wrote my thesis based on Harvard collection. And you know, both my thesis and the other book I wrote, both of them are, especially thesis, is translated translated to Arabic and published by the Faculty of Arts in Rabat, Morocco, the capital of Morocco. And it is a textbook, which makes me very happy. I really did not want to publish it, but the translator dug out the book and translated it, and it became really a textbook for all students in colleges, and they published like 3,000 copies, and I was very, very pleased. And then the Ministry of Education, Culture there, they invite me to lecture and so on and so forth. And to my surprise, a few years back, they even selected the name of my book, which is The Kingdom of the Book. They selected for a name for the International Book Fair in Casablanca, and they invited me as a guest speaker, and you know, they honored me and so on. And it was fun. I was laughing all the time, especially when I was sitting in my room in the hotel watching television. They were advertisement about the book fair, the Kingdom of the Book. I would just laugh. It is amazing. It's really amazing, but it's very humbling too. at the same time, you know, I feel happy, but also humbled by it. And I am aware of the fact that people will pay attention that, and they have. Moroccans invite me to lecture in various places, and they interview me, and so on and so forth. So this is my educational, the story of my education and leap into writing. Yeah.